Why are all these vehicles running their engines and not going anywhere? We don't know. But we do know idling drivers don't like to be asked about it.
I appreciate it. If you would never do that again.
Why do you idle?
Because I was just sitting in my car waiting.
Because I wanted to stay warm.
We tested the staying warm excuse. We drove a Jeep Wrangler, a vehicle not known for great insulation, down to the library. Outside was about freezing. Inside started at 87. Then me and Lily sat and waited to get cold. And waited. After 8 minutes, it was still 77. It has now been 24 minutes sitting in the car without the engine running. It is 31 degrees outside, and in the car, 74.1 degrees. I'm comfortable in just jeans and a t-shirt. Finally, after 45 minutes, it was still 70 degrees inside. And we quit and went in to get some new books. For the "my engine needs to warm up" excuse, consider the Toyota Tacoma. It'll claw its way up nasty hills, but needs no warm-up.
You turn the key, you let the engine's going to increase in RPMs, it's going to drop back down, you put it in gear and drive away.
Swears should know better than your father, better than your mechanic.
I'm chief engineer, so I'm in charge of the vehicle from the ground up, from a blank piece of paper all the way till it goes to production.
Jeep engineers say the same thing: start it and go. And pre-warming the inside for yourself at 13 degrees for the truck to warm enough for the automatic heater to turn on, we burned almost 6 minutes of fuel just idling. Another morning, 6 degrees colder, we started it and took off. Heating temp took about a minute less, and we were about 1.5 miles down the road. As for that chilly driving time, studies show being cold for a bit burns calories. Did you know that's illegal?
I didn't.
Not illegal.
No, I didn't know.
You didn't know that? It is against the law in several Utah cities.
It is about a culture of selfishness in a way.
The Logan Council passed an anti-idling ordinance in 2014.
Because I was listening to music. Because I was waiting for my friend to come.
While illegal, that still sounds better than running your truck while you shop, something this guy's owner's manual says is dangerous, or sleeping with the window half open. And we still haven't hit the pollution factor.
I can unequivocally say that idling is not the way to go.
Dr. Martin would know.
For the past year and a half, we've measured actual idling vehicles. We know what they emit compared to when you shut it off and restart it.
His team studies habits
At Banks, 13.5% idle.
and how much they pollute. Today, a toxicology student is weighing the junk cars and other polluters put into your air. The orange bars in this study show how much more junk you spew idling versus the shut it off and restart pink bars.
We know that your emissions are much, much less just by shutting your car off. The great rule of thumb is when you put your car in park, shut it off.
Brian Champagne, Fox 13 News, Utah.
We want to check, is there a difference between male drivers and female drivers, young drivers and experienced drivers in terms of emissions from their cars.
Researchers tested that hypothesis by fitting GPS, vehicle performance, and emissions tools onto a Dodge Durango. All drivers, including me, drove the same route, a mix of residential, highway, hill, and flat.
We were measuring the emissions while they were driving, second by second.
And after putting 20 of us through the course, researcher Abed Kader crunched the data. He's visiting from Palestine, working with USU research professor Randy Martin. The results?
We found that male drivers are less pollutant than female drivers.
They measured carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons, which come from unburned fuel, and nitrogen oxide.
It has its own profile that's more related, I think, to how hard the engine is working.
Young drivers, they loaded the engine more than experienced drivers.
And kids, how much you load up your engine with your right foot has a big effect on how much it takes in and spits out.
I'm not surprised that different behavior gives us different emissions. I'm a little surprised at the trends that we saw, almost stereotypical trends, young versus old, inexperienced versus experienced drivers, and even, I hate to say it, there does seem to be a gender bias.
Both say the data need more analysis before they can make too many generalizations, but
we need to do a better job of educating
all sectors, driving more smoothly rather than stepping on the gas, watching our speed a little bit better.
Brian Champagne, Fox 13 News, Utah. Volvo promises a self-driving car by 2020. Ford the year after that.
Ford will be mass producing vehicles with full autonomy within 5 years. And that means there'll be no steering wheel, no gas pedals, and no brake pedals.
Before we complain about the machines, consider we're not doing so well ourselves.
We try not to say accident because no one means to cause a crash, but it's never an accident, with 93% of crashes being attributed to human error.
So those 93% of crashes caused by texting, tablets, tailgating, and partaking should go away.
Anything that helps us reduce the amount of crashes out on the roadway caused by human error is a good thing.
To find out the effects of autonomous vehicles on humanity, we went to the College of Humanities and Social Sciences here at Utah State University.
As a health researcher, the first thing that comes to mind is the potential number of lives that could be saved. I also think it could potentially revolutionize mobility for people with various kinds of health problems and disabilities.
Or what if it can turn one way and run into one person, turn the other way and run into another person?
Philosophy brought up how a programmed car would swerve in an emergency.
Suppose that there's no way to avoid running into a crowd of people. There's 5 people here, there's 5 people there, or the car can plow itself into some cement obstacle, killing the driver or the person riding, killing the passenger.
Besides the greater good program, Hienemann thinks about altered paths.
What if it leads to a smaller number of deaths, but they're not the same people dying as would have been dying if humans had been behind the wheel?
Just something to think about when you don't have to think as much about driving. Brian Champagne, Fox 13 News, Utah. Chevy's trying to hide the looks of the 2017 Camaro ZL1, but not the transmission making these shifts. It has 10 gears that they claim shift faster than a Porsche's. Now for some perspective, because some of you don't know how many gears are on your own car. Older cars typically have about 3 gears, some as many as 4, some as few as 2. Newer cars have between 5 and 6 gears, and the really new ones between 7 and 9. But the more options you have, like this 21-speed bike, the less work you or your engine has to do. And while you might not be a Camaro shopper, GM says all this testing will let it put the more efficient shifter in 8 more vehicles by 2018. And even if you don't want a Chevy, expect the other guys to build something to keep up. If you're not a buyer for Ford's new GT, you can't get its carbon fiber wheels yet. But expect these lighter, quieter, way more efficient at everything wheels to work their way down to your car eventually. And if you don't want to own a car at all, that's okay. GM set up Maven car borrowing in a few major eastern cities and just hit 1 million miles driven. This week, the company that loaned us this announced they put $300 million into ride-sharing app Get. And the one that loaned us this is buying into Scoop, which is more Northern California-based. And if you don't drive in any of those major cities, like the GT's wheels or the Camaro's transmission, all that should work its way down to you eventually. Brian Champagne, Fox 13 News, Utah.